in the hopefully near future, when we're able to get together and hang out with people in person more, many of us are probably going to have spent so much time on Zoom that we're going to be wondering why the other person hasn't frozen up like during our conversation, because
it, it, it took a long time for me to get used to just talking on the computer all day long. So.
Hey everybody, Ken Hendricks from Home Instead Senior Care here. Thanks again for joining me today. Today my guest is Jesse Freiden. Jesse is an extremely talented and accomplished photographer specializing in pictures of, shall we say, our very best of friends. Jesse is widely renowned for his work in dog photography. Our paths recently crossed through a mutual friend of ours, Melissa Smith Wilkinson. You might remember her from a few episodes ago. She came on to talk about her upcoming virtual Alzheimer's and Dementia Caregiver retreat that she's putting on that will be happening on October 2nd and 3rd of this year. Jesse is going to be doing a workshop for the retreat dealing in his specialty and passion, which is photography. And so shortly after connecting with Jesse, I asked if he'd be up for coming on the show, and I'm really delighted that he said yes. So without further ado, please welcome Jesse to the show. Thanks for joining me, Jesse.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
And so I really love talking to people who are obviously very passionate about what they do. And so I'd love to hear a bit of insight into when photography became the medium for you, when it became your thing, when it was obvious. Was there a special time or season or event in life that you can trace that back to?
I always say that the reason I became a photographer is because when I was little, my parents had an old Polaroid camera, and I would steal it somehow and take pictures of my best friend neighbor across the street. And I think from a young age, I was really intrigued by the process of interacting with my world kind of as like a voyeur through this little tool. And then, fast forward when I was in college, I really became a little bit obsessed with collecting Polaroid cameras, and I kind of became self-taught. And it was the same feeling of observing my world, and I was making portraits. That's my true passion, is really telling stories about people and my world and their world. And so it was always a thing that I was really interested in. But I didn't start doing it professionally until a few years after college. I began an apprenticeship at a photography studio in San Francisco. They did portraits, family portraits. And I just was like, this is what I want to do for my life, for my career. And I worked my butt off for a year as an apprentice. I learned a lot. And that really threw me into it. And it was the first time I photographed a friend and their dog. There was a complete aha moment that I was like, this is fascinating. I can do this in a new way. And I just ran with it. So.
That's awesome. When you say Polaroids, I always think about those instant ones that would spit out the photo and you had to sit there and shake it, and flap it. Did you have some of those too?
Yeah. I mean, I still have a probably too large of a collection of those ones, and the ones from the 70s and 80s where you would have to peel the film. And there's before digital came out, I was only shooting film. I got my first digital camera maybe 3 years ago, so I was very old school for a while.
Oh, wow.
And I used to print in a darkroom, and so I think using instant cameras was my entryway into the kind of tactile sort of process of photography. And that's always stayed with me, is working slowly and intentionally. And that definitely sort of informed my practice now.
That's really cool. Yeah, there's something that's lost a little bit with the digital, medium, in lots of different ways, like with music, with photos, all those things. Everything's coming to us through a screen. There's not, holding a record of an album that you really like. Holding that vinyl is really cool. I remember growing up and looking through the artwork, the pictures of the bands that I liked and stuff, and that was always one of the most fun parts about getting something new. And then printing, I think sometimes when we when we take photos of the family and stuff, when we print those up, when we actually take the time to print those up and get them on the wall, it's a lot more special than just looking at it on our phone or on a computer screen.
Yeah. Yeah. I talk about that a lot in my job and any classes, any students I work with. When because everything is digital, whether you're using your phone or a good camera or whatever, if you stop before you print that piece and put it on the wall, you're not letting the process of photography exist fully. You're cutting its legs off, basically. So I think there's something really important to be said, especially when you're photographing things you love, whatever that thing is, to make sure you finish the process and put those pieces on the wall and exist with them. That's what art is about,
Yeah.
is existing with these things. So
you're making me think that it's just the human experience. It's like the reason that when we go to museums that there's signs that say don't touch. Because you see something that you really admire, that you're really enjoying visually, you want to reach out and touch it.
yeah.
Like you want to hold it, you want to see, you want to experience that element of it. That's really interesting. But you mentioned the other day when we connected that you had some familial connections to Alzheimer's and dementia in your family. So I'm assuming that that's probably where your passion for being involved with a caregiver retreat comes from. Would you mind sharing a bit of your story along those lines?
Yeah, totally. That definitely is what made me excited to work with Melissa and work with this whole seminar. So my grandmother had dementia for quite a while, and it was of course very difficult for her, and it was difficult for all of us. She was healthy physically, but the dementia was sort of a drawn out process, and it was just really heartbreaking to see her go through that. And my mother had a brain tumor, which is similar. And it was a short battle, but it was very, very difficult just to see someone just disappear in a way, but be there, that it's the in and out. It's just really, it was very difficult. So, and it's not something I talk that much about, so there's something, I really like getting involved in projects that I understand personally. And so that's definitely what made me want to get involved and also talk to people about how beautiful and difficult it is to be in that process with a loved one, and how we can use photography to sort of honor that, the joy and the beauty and the pain all together.
Well, yeah, speaking of that, I really found your website, and I know that most of what's featured on your website is the photography that you specialized in over these last, how many years have you been doing the dog photography?
In almost 15 years.
So over that last 15 years, I mean, you have some amazing stuff on there, and it's not hard at all. You see in the first few moments of visiting that there's a level of talent and passion that is behind your work that is just awesome. And you mentioned that you approach photos and opportunities to do sessions with the idea of telling a story, and I thought that was really interesting. What does your workflow look like with that in mind, and how do you approach a project as a means to tell a story?
Yeah, so for all these almost 15 years, my focus has been photographing our relationship with our animals. That's been my career. What for me, so for my clients, obviously, it's a wonderful experience. They end up with beautiful artwork. But for me, it's a study of the human condition. I think that is what connects all of my projects over all the years I've been photographing. Is I want to understand the human condition as a human, and I want to understand what unconditional love is and what the joy and pain of human interaction is, just as an observer, as like a social study for myself. So for any projects I do, I've done a bunch of books, I've done other stuff not related to animals. I want to tell a story, and the way I do that is but unlike some people just want to go in and take a snapshot. For me, it's just, that's not enough. I always make sure I get to know the people before I start photographing them, understand what their story is, what, why are they coming to me? What is the history between them and their loved one? What is the reality of how they feel about this human, dog, etc., so that I, as an artist, can understand those feelings and feel them myself. And then when I'm creating, have that be part of the experience. I'm feeling the same things my clients feel. And that, for me as an artist, is why photography is spectacular, because I get to like go into different worlds and be consumed by that world and then come out of it and then make something beautiful for that person. And that it never gets boring,
That's so awesome. Yeah, I relate to that a lot as a musician, just being in that you can really tell when someone, well, I mean, maybe you can't tell all the time. I think some people can go through the motions really, convincingly maybe.
Yes.
But sometimes it feels like you really can tell when the singer is like really in the emotion of a song, and it's oftentimes where you're feeling that with them because they're drawing you in, and then you see the tears come, and then you see like the fact that just validating that they were really there. And so that's really amazing to think about the process of taking the time to sit with people's stories, especially about them and their animal, or them and their loved one, and then to make the effort to be in that headspace while you're going through the project. I think that could make a huge difference. So lastly, to chat a little bit about your upcoming workshop for the caregiver retreat. We don't want to give away everything, but you mentioned some multifaceted goals in our phone call before, when we were talking about getting together today. And I was really intrigued by the idea of the therapeutic benefits of something like photography for folks, and coming into it, being a novice, learning from an expert like you, how to utilize photography in a way that would be therapeutic. And then you also, we talked about gently helping folks along the line to finding the beauty in their loved one's journey, because, and that's a sensitive issue, because their loved one's journey is often obscured by the reality of living with dementia. And sometimes I'm sure folks can feel like, wondering, where's the beauty in that? But it's the beauty of life, right? I mean, what do you have to say about those types of things?
Yeah, it's a really good, it's an important thing to talk about. And, again, although for all these years I've been focusing on humans and their dogs, it's a really deep study for me. And it's the exact same thing that I think about, certainly for this class I'm going to teach. It is very difficult to balance the beauty of a long-lived life and a long-lived relationship with a loved one, whatever that loved one is, whatever that thing is, and also acknowledge that we are mortal beings, and that we get sick, and we may live a long time with illness, or we may not. It's a very difficult balance to sort of acknowledge and honor and move through those things gently with clients or with people that I'll be teaching. But my goal for this class is twofold. It's to give people a few easy, effective photography tips, whether they're using their phone or a camera, just to give them a couple ways to approach how to make a good portrait. It's also to acknowledge the fact that photography is a healing medium and anyone can do it. It's a way to honor our loved ones. It's also like a therapeutic thing for us to create. Maybe some caretakers, maybe they're not ready to photograph their family members that are dealing with dementia, but maybe they need to just have a creative outlet for themselves to sort of keep themselves supported, and inspired. So for me, how will I cram that all into like a very quick little seminar? I don't know yet, but that's the goal. And I just want to be able to, acknowledge it's a difficult thing to make a portrait of someone that is going through this difficult experience. We don't know
Yeah.
when it's going to end. Yeah, there's a joy and pain to it. But to acknowledge it, I think makes it more accessible. And to acknowledge it, which is part of what you do and part of what this, Melissa's online conference is going to do, is just gently saying like it's okay to have these discussions, and like here are some things we can do to help each other through that experience. And photography, I think, is a really important tool that I can offer to people. So
I totally agree. I can see that, for quite a bit of time. I've been with Home Instead coming up on around like 10 years. And for the first few years I was with the organization, one of our primary taglines that we used a lot, that we were talking about a lot, was changing the face of aging. And I really like that because it confronts something, especially within our culture, this there's an aversion to aging. There's an aversion um, to what we look like as we age. And so, photography, um, it really captures that. and and you're ending up, in a roundabout way, you're ending up confronting that stigma
yeah.
and helping folks to see that every portion of our lives is precious, and every portion of our lives is worthy of attention.
Mm-hmm.
And that not every aspect of life is enjoyable, but I mean, even those of us that are, that find we have the most aversion to things like aging and things of that sort, and difficulties in our lives that come during those periods of life, would have to admit, I mean, we all know that the difficulties that we go through are some of the things that shape us the most.
That's right.
But yeah, I feel like I could talk about that forever. But
Yeah, one of the things that I love doing with photography is I've done a couple books about the human experience. I did a book recently about um, people living with HIV whose dogs have helped them really survive. And for me, these side projects are always about how can I, as an artist, take a narrative of something that has so much stigma, like HIV or animal shelter volunteers, and show what's beautiful about that, and re-understand that experience. Like facing something that has so much negative stigma and fear and negativity, et cetera. Yeah, and show what's powerful and beautiful about it. So that's part of what interests me in this and teaching this class and being involved, is because, I have so many thoughts about it too, but it might not be, it doesn't have to be a straight up front facing portrait of a person going through dementia or Alzheimer's. It can be a detail of a hand. It can be something intimate that means something to the person and not anyone else. And I think that's, it's empowering for people to understand that they get to define what this is, what caretaking is, and what, a loved one going through illnesses. Doesn't have to be what society says it is, So I think that's exciting for me too, is to sort of give people permission to re-understand that.
Yeah, that is very exciting. That's good stuff, Jesse. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this. I think that, a lot of the folks that end up watching these episodes, they're caregivers, and I think that it's just a very hope-filled message, to get across that under the veneer of Alzheimer's or dementia or the difficulties that we're dealing with, there's the beauty of life still, and it's very worth looking for. So thanks so much for coming on and having this conversation with me. I look forward to checking out the workshop you're going to do at the upcoming retreat. Again, that's a virtual Alzheimer's and dementia caregiver retreat. We'll put the link in the notes. That's coming up October 3rd, October 2nd and 3rd of this year. And where can folks find you, Jesse?
Yeah, so my website is just jessefreiden.com. That is my dog photography site. But if you want to look at uplifting photographs of dogs, if you want to get information about taking a class with me, you can get my information from the website.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Ken. Thanks so much.
Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
For over 25 years, Home Instead has helped seniors stay home. Now, staying home isn't just staying in the place they love. It's staying safe. Home Instead. To us, it's personal.